lesson on impulse and momentum in the classical mechanics realm. Overall, we have learned about state functions so far, and momentum is a state function. This is why I'm bringing it up. Why do we use state functions? State functions are advantageous, and we see this with energy, that we only have to identify an initial state and a final state, especially in conjunction with conservation. And this principle works for scalars and vectors. So we saw this with energy, initial state, final state. We can conserve quantities in between, take into account if there's any external forces adding or taking away energy from the system, and that makes it easy, right? It's not like force analysis or kinematics where we kind of have to watch the object all the way through the motion. Here, we don't get bogged down with the details of the event. We can just consider before and after. And so you're seeing with your sketches that in order to help you identify this initial state and final state, what's going on in the initial state, what's going on in the final state, your sketches are changing to include an initial and a final. So I'm going to keep practicing this, keep practicing drawing this stuff out, organizing it and encoding it for problem solving in your head. Linear momentum is a quantity represented by P, and it is a vector quantity and is the product of the mass and the velocity of an object. We saw with force, that's the product of the mass and the acceleration. And early on in physics, it was thought that this quantity mv was equivalent to force. But what happened was people realized these were two different fundamental quantities. Force is different than momentum. And oftentimes in everyday street talk, we think about momentum more in terms of force or force into momentum, and this is the formalization of the concept, mass times velocity. And so we're seeing these cosmological composite quantities such as force, mass times acceleration, the inertial component times some sort of motion. And you'll see that as we continue into rotational quantities as well. So this is linear momentum. There's nothing fancy about the units here. There's no, this historical person came in and said, these are my units. So we're just looking at the units of mass, which is kilograms, and the units of velocity, which is meters per second in SI. And that's the units of momentum, linear momentum. The principle of superposition also applies with momentum. We saw this with force. We saw this with energy. You can do this with vector quantities, with scalar quantities, and it is also true with momentum, which is very good because momentum is what allows us to deal with systems of objects better. The problem I picked out for us is the two blocks problem. Two blocks are moving along the floor. Block A is moving to the right with a speed, and block B is moving to the left with a speed. Well, I'm going to draw a general sketch here real quick so I can kind of get some idea of the information going on. So let's see, A is 2 kilograms and it's moving to the right. So I can say VA equals 6 meters per second. And then B is 3 times as big. I'm going to draw it a little bigger. So there's B. It kind of gives me an idea, which is the dominating mass in the system maybe because of inertia. VB equals negative 3 meters per second. It's moving to the left. And I'm actually going to assign a coordinate system in here. Remember, because momentum is a vector, we need to assign a coordinate system so we know which direction is positive to assign our vectors. So that's the information I have in the problem. They give me masses, and I can look in the paragraph there. It asks what's the momentum of A, what's the momentum of B, and what's the total momentum of the two-block system. So momentum, this is a straightforward application. The momentum of A will equal the mass of A times the velocity of A. So very straightforward, pluggy-chuggy question. Mass of A is 2. The velocity of A, I'm going to put in here a plus 6 to represent the vector. So overall, I get a plus 12. And again, the units are kilograms, 2 kilograms times 6 meters per second. And we're just writing that out. Kilograms times meters per second. So that's the momentum of A. We'll do the same for B. Mass B times velocity B. Well, mass B is 6. velocity b is -3, and when I multiply this out, I get -18 kilograms times meters per second. Those are our answers for A and B. Well, C, we can use the principle of superposition for momentum, which says that the total momentum has to be the momentum of A plus the momentum of B. And you're going to see that we're going to have some sign issues going on. The total momentum for the entire system will be -6 kilograms times meters per second. And I'm going to keep a hold of that number. Notice this is part 1. We're going to return to this problem after I introduce another concept. And that's how you calculate momentum. Very straightforward. Mass times velocity. Total it up, you just add those together. And notice that this is a 1D situation. If we had a 2D situation, we might assign a coordinate system in 2 directions, and momentum can be added in the x direction and y direction separately, just like we did with forces. So that's a technique to use when you're dealing with 2-dimensional momentum. The concept that I need to introduce, that's one of the most fundamental ones here, which leads to conservation of momentum, is the impulse momentum theorem. And where does it come from? It starts with Newton's second law. F net equals ma, and when we plug in what we know about acceleration, the change in the velocity over the change in time, we can put that in and see this identity going on. Mass times velocity is momentum, and mass is just a scalar, so I can move it next to the velocity. See how I did that right here? I moved the mass next to the velocity vector, and I put a change. Sometimes the mass changes, but with acceleration we think about the velocity changing. So here we're looking at that whole quantity, the change in momentum, and we still have the time factor underneath. So the net force can cause a change in momentum over a time period. So that's where impulse comes from. That's the definition of impulse. When a force is applied over a period of time, it causes a change in momentum. That's the momentum impulse theorem. So what we're going to note here is the external forces is the sum of all the external forces on the object or system. Remember, if we have multiple objects, there may be Newton's third law pair forces going on between them, but those are internal forces for the system. What we really care about is anything from the outside on multiple objects. Often that's not the case, or we can quantify it. So we need to watch out. What's the external force on the system? And the assumption we're making about that is that it's assumed to be constant the whole time. This is algebra-based physics. We're not doing calculus-based with an integral where you could integrate over where it's not a constant value. That would be the technique there. But for us, for now, to use this principle, we can assume that this external force is constant, and often they will say the average force. What's the average force applied? And so this gives us an eyeball. It's usually not constant over that time period. For instance, we had a lab where we bounced a ball against the floor, and on that lab you saw how the acceleration vector changed. It dipped and then went back up again, and so we have this force being non-constant, and you can imagine that with a ball bouncing on the floor. The force is small, and then it gets larger and larger and larger, a maximum value, and then it starts moving upward and it goes backwards along that route. So it's not constant the whole time, usually in real life. For the purposes of this equation, we're going to assume that they are. I'm returning to the 2 blocks problem, and here's our setup from before. We had 2 blocks, A and B. They were moving towards each other, and there's a positive x direction. It says after 2 seconds, the momentum of the system is measured to be -38 kilograms meters per second, with the right defined as positive. So at some point later, there's a P final. Remember, we had a P initial for the system, -6 kilograms meters per second. And then now we have some P final for the total, -38 kilograms meters per second. Okay, so I don't know, I don't think they're touching. I don't see how the picture from the initial to final might change. So I'm going to leave it there and see what the question's asking me. So I have a time period. I'm going to notice I have a time period, which tells me I'll probably use the impulse equation because there's a time period. What is the magnitude and direction of the force applied to the system? Assume the applied force is constant. So we were going to do that anyway. So let's write out part D. The magnitude and direction of the force applied. So it seems like the impulse equation is going to work here. And if I solve for the force, the external force on the system, I'll get the change in momentum over the change in time. Okay? And this will be on the whole system. On system. Right? This is for the both of them combined. This is for both of them combined. So we have the change in P total. Well, that'll be P final total minus P initial total. And we can put that over the change in time. Okay, so we can plug our numbers in. The final is negative 38 minus the initial, which was negative 6. And our time period is 2. So the external force, and we're going to keep track of the negative signs here because it tells us the direction in our coordinate system. Let's see, negative 38 plus 6 will be negative 32 over 2, which is negative 16 kilograms meters per second divided by seconds. So that has to be newtons. It's a force. So there's the force applied on the system. Interesting. So where's that force being applied? It says, to which block was the force applied? Well, when I looked at this, when I found this value, I was looking at the momentum of the total system. I don't know what components A and B contribute to this negative 38. So I don't know how it changed from negative 6 to negative 38 with the individual blocks A and B. I just know a force was applied to the system. I don't know which one. So what I'm going to put here is I'm going to say can't tell. I'm going to say can't tell yet because we're not done with this problem. You'll see what happens here. What you might be able to say is, okay, now that I know this total final momentum, it says after the force is removed, the speed of A is measured to be 10 meters per second. So I have V final A equals 10 meters per second. To the left. Okay, so A is to the left. Oh, okay, interesting. This way. So let's put a negative in there, negative 10 meters per second. The speed of block A, it was moving right to begin with, and now it's moving to the left. What is the speed and direction of the second block? So B, we need to find B. So let's do this. The final momentum, of course, the final momentum has to equal the momentum of A final plus the momentum of B final. And I can write this out more. We know the momentum final for the system. It is the negative 38. The momentum of A is going to be MA final, which we know, and we know the mass of A, plus the mass of B times VB final. And that's what we're trying to find, VB final. That's here. Okay, so we know these values in here other than VB final. So I'm going to solve for VB final, and this is a vector. I'm going to keep track of my negative signs when I do this. I'm going to get P final minus MAVA final, and then divide by the mass of B. Do some algebra on that equation. So I'm going to take negative 38, subtract the mass of A, which is 2, times the final velocity of A, which is negative 10. It's a negative 10 to the left. Divided by the mass of B. The mass of B is 6. So let's see. We're going to have negative 38 plus 20. So VB final equals negative 38 plus 20 is negative 18 over 6. So VB final is negative 3 meters per second. Okay. So that's part F. I'm going to go back and look what was going on and see that the block B was originally moving to the left with the speed of 3 meters per second. That's what this answer is telling me. In the final state, it's also moving to the left at negative 3 meters per second, which means that I can go back up to E and say, oh, well, the velocity of B didn't change. The momentum of B didn't change, right? When I look at the momentum of B, the change in B didn't change. And the change, there was some sort of change in A. It's not equal to 0. I'll at least put not equal to 0. It's a negative value because A totally changed direction, right? It was going right, and now it's going left. So this force was applied to block A. So, and I intentionally ordered these questions in this direction so that you could see when we got done with that force, you can't just assume that it was applied to both blocks. You have to look at the motion of each block separately to see how the force affected each block separately. But we know it is applied to the whole system somehow. It was only one component, but when we look at the whole system, we could say that it was 16 newtons on the whole system. It just so happened that 16 newtons only went to block A and not block B. Very elegant question to exemplify the concepts here.